Welcome back to Rays Latino Talk Podcast, Latino talk that will change your life and help you be 100% every moment of your life. What a blessing that is to be who you are all the time. So give yourself that gift, give yourself that blessing. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Rafael Collazo, and today on Rays Latino Talk Podcast, we've been talking a lot at Rays Podcast, which you can find at rayspodcast.com, and our podcast, which features our podcasts and blogs, and of course, subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher at Rays Podcast. We've been talking a lot about decision makings, taking action, and some of the lessons we've learned as part of the Rays Podcast community. So kind of cut the line in life, and who better to kind of continue this conversation with us, because she was very much spurring this conversation on social media herself. But Dr. Maria Hernandez, let me properly introduce her. A great friend of the podcast, Dr. Maria Hernandez is a consultant, executive coach, and writer who shares her journey to help Latinas and others break through the glass ceiling for career and personal fulfillment. And Dr. Hernandez's blog, Latino Cubicle Confidential, can be found on many web platforms, including our dear friends at Latina Lista. And you can always find her, continue the conversation on Twitter at Savvy Latina Info. Welcome back to Rays Latino Talk Podcast, a great mentored friend, Dr. Hernandez. Dr. Maria, welcome back to Rays Podcast.
Hey, Ray. Great to hear your voice, and it's a pleasure to be with you again.
Oh, it's such a blessing to have a Silicon Valley insider as a friend. So we may get to that as we have this conversation. But Maria, I really wanted to kind of begin the conversation with, you have some exciting news to share, and I think it's an example of some of the many lessons you teach us about how to position ourselves, how to take action, and ultimately how to put ourselves in the rooms we need to be the voice for the Hispanic community that our community deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share with everyone on the show today that I was recently appointed as a Board of Trustee member for Alameda Health Systems. And this is one of the major public health providers that's headquartered in Oakland, California, which is in Alameda County. And there are about 4,500 employees of this entire system, and we run almost everything from a teaching hospital to a trauma facility to a psychiatric ward to, the most elaborate nursing facilities that you can imagine. And so I'm really proud of this moment. Professionally, it's a wonderful opportunity, but I do want to share with you all that this is not something that happened by accident. It really came about by, first of all, going to my personal board of advisor members who could recommend me for something of this nature, and number two, putting myself out there for the interview process and the screening process and making sure I showed up. So I am now hopefully being considered for other boards, and I'm really excited about this role.
And so we're going to get to how do you develop, how do you cultivate, how do you maximize your personal board of advisors. Some would call it, in the political role, we often call it a kitchen cabinet, if you will.
That's right.
Because one of the things that I know Maria is gonna mention in her comments is that we don't realize oftentimes the kind of network we have around us, and how do we maximize the strong support that we already have. But I want to take a step back before we get to that conversation on decision making and developing your board of advisors to really discuss. Take a step back for a minute, Maria, and really talk about. You often talk about this concept of putting ourselves out there, particularly for Latinas who have all the talents, all the skills, all the abilities, have put in their time, have done the work for bigger and better opportunities in career and personal fulfillment. And so talk to us about kind of how you think about, and what does that mean to you, particularly for Latinas looking to take the next step in their careers. What's the first step in putting themselves out there?
Absolutely. So the first step is to recognize that it's not just about being knowledgeable in a subject area. It's about who you know, and most importantly, who knows you. So if you are the best kept secret in your industry, you may shine in your team, you may have the best success with the results you're trying to produce for your organization, but if nobody knows about you, chances are it's going to be very difficult to be seen as someone who can be promoted, someone who can be appointed to special task force or committees or certainly a board of directors. And so for me, putting yourself out there is telling people what you'd like to do. And sometimes that's a little bit frightening because it's like, when you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to lose 10 pounds this summer, wow, everybody's going to be watching you and see, hey, did they really do it or not? And it's the same thing when you say to someone, as I did to a close colleague, I said, I am so concerned about the lack of Latinas on corporate boards or boards anywhere. What are we going to do about that? And she said, well, if you want to do this, I know someone who sits on this board, and I know they're going to need to vote for new members fairly soon. Would you like me to put your name in this person's email box? And I said, wow, that sounds like a big responsibility. And she said, it is, but that's the way you get started. And so I said, absolutely, let's do it. It may be as simple as that, of simply saying what you want to do. And the other part is preparing for what you want to do. Being out there saying, I'm going to need to learn what it takes to be, a chairman of the board for a public entity. I'm going to need to learn what it means to be on the board of a corporation. These are not things that you take on without some kind of careful study of what it requires of you. So putting yourself out there, telling people you want to do something different or, ascend the corporate ladder or take on a new role, and then preparing for it so you know what to expect when you get into that particular opportunity. So those are the two things that I think I would say to anybody. Are you putting yourself out there, telling people what you want to do, and then seizing the opportunities when they come forth, and are you preparing for them? Those are the two things I would say is key.
And we're talking to consultant, entrepreneur, and really one of the great thinkers in the Hispanic community around empowering ourselves and breaking that glass ceiling in corporate boardrooms, particularly for Latinas, but all of us. I know I learned a lot from Maria's mentorship myself, and I'm not Latina last time I checked. Maria, it's interesting because I think I'm sure one of the struggles or one of the elements of this process of putting ourselves out there that you get feedback from Latinas is Latinas a lot of times are too humble, and this often don't feel culturally it's rude to boast or expressing your qualifications, your skills to others may feel like you're showing off. It may make them feel uncomfortable. So for those that are in that space or feeling that way, but have all the talents to progress in their careers, what have you found has been some of the keys to help people break through that timidity and that humbleness and some of the cultural dynamics that impact Latinas in the workforce?
That's a great question, and I do understand how difficult this can be for us from a cultural standpoint and just from being female. I think that women are given a lot of messages about being less brash and bold and assertive than men are, and I think that's just part of our social sort of construct of what it means to be female. On the other hand, I would just say to many young women, I often say, get over it. This is a place in which you are going to have to compete very strongly for these opportunities, and one of the things you'll have to do is to find a way to speak up and put your name in the hat for opportunities and do it in a way that feels authentic for you. So it's one thing to come in the door and say, I'm the best thing since sliced bread and I deserve to be on the board. It's another thing to say, I've been working at a craft for quite some time. I feel I have something to contribute. I feel I have something to offer in this role, and I'd like to be considered for it. One can come across as being just arrogant and bombastic, and the other can come across very authentically that you have something to offer. So I think within our culture, we're often reminded not to speak so much about ourselves, to defer to authority, to be very respectful of others. And there's nothing wrong with simply saying, I have something to contribute. I believe I can be of value. And it's a way to demonstrate that you respect yourself, that you respect who you are and what you can bring to the table. And that might be a small, subtle mind shift that everybody needs to make. But I do think that's part of it, that we bring something to the table. We have something of value. Look at our demographics. Look at the potential within our community. Look at the numbers of Latinos that are now actually going into college. We still need to work on, completion rates, but Latinas and Latinos are doing all the right things, and we need to be held to a standard that says we're going to be part of the leadership of this society. So I think that's the inner voice that I think I've heard inside, and I certainly feel that many other Latinas have that as well. We're just not sure about making those kinds of big, bold claims for our careers or our lives, and I think we need to openly talk about it like this show today and say it's okay to feel that you're kind of stepping out there. I mean, I have to admit, my very first meeting of the board, which already took place, I was very self-conscious. I was very self-aware that this was my first experience at this level, and I needed to contain some of my anxiety, some of my inner voices saying, do you really belong here? And yes, that happens to us, but I don't think people who achieve these kinds of successes or activities are always walking around feeling completely and fully sure that everything's going to go right. So I speak down to that inner voice and I say, I belong here, I can do this, and I'm ready to roll.
Absolutely, and you're listening to Dr. Maria Hernandez, consultant, executive coach, and writer, and a great mentor and friend here at Rays Latino Talk Podcast and Rays Podcast family. And and we're going to get to in a minute to Maria's great insight on building your personal board of directors and some great tips on decision making. But before we get to that, so you got to keep listening. But before we get to that, I do want to add a point that I'd like you to touch on, Maria, because you hit on some amazing things I want to make sure we elaborate on for a second. One is, sort of being respected for your value. That is so critically important. And one of the reasons I started Rays Latino Talk Podcast, one of the things that drives me as, in my work as a political organizer around the country and working, and having rubbed elbows with some of the hot shots of my industry and the larger society, I was always underwhelmed by those experiences because I'm like, wow, these are supposed to be the best of the best, and I can hang, and I grew up in North Philly and may have not had some of the titles or opportunities some of these other folks did. So that drives me to really maximize my platform and be seen for the value that I believe I bring to the table, and more acutely the wonderful network of people around me that are part of this great community that we're on, particularly online and throughout our Latino leadership space around the country. But the other thing is, on some level, the idea, even for Latina professionals and Hispanics that have achieved quite a bit of success in their careers, the idea of being on a corporate board of directors or being a high-end executive in a major corporation seems like there's a mental glass ceiling that we've got to overcome, Maria. So I wanted, since we had you on the line, I wanted you to share what have been some of the keys for you to kind of think big, think outside the box, and help people, even those of us that have achieved quite a bit, to really understand that they have the potential to achieve that level of success and even more.
Great question again. Yeah, Ray. So two things. One is that I think I sat around and looked at what the data was like, and I said, how is it possible that out of the almost 3,000 board members in the United States in the Fortune 500, there's only 30 Latinas. I certainly know a lot of Latina professionals who are incredibly bright, incredibly gifted in a specific field. I know that they are very committed to the communities that they serve. And how is it that they've not been tapped into a board of directors? I'd like, for example, for all of these consumer product corporations that are out there who want to sell us everything from shampoo to lipstick to kitchen utensils, I want them to put us on their board so that we know that our voice is heard at the very top. It's not just about targeting us for marketing campaigns. So that made me a little bit more, I'd say, aware of the problem and a desire to fix it. The second is that I felt when I looked at the characteristics of some of the existing board members, I just said, I think I can do that too. I have that kind of skill set, or I can go get that kind of skill set. And it made a difference for me to feel like there's not a mystery to this. There's a real clear path forward, and I think I can take that path. So I guess I'm saying part of me got a little bit upset that there aren't enough Latinas on corporate boards, and the other part of me said, I'm going to do it too. I can do this, and I will make the best effort to get on the board. And so I started talking about it to people, wrote a column and said, I need to do this. So that's how it started.
Yeah, no, I've got a couple tips on this that I've found helpful that I wanted to share with our Rays Latino Talk podcast listeners, our Rays of Light out there. The first one is, it's interesting, and I have to give a shout out. The person that really brought me this blessing, this lesson was, I believe, still the only Latina in the Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame. If you're familiar with Beginning Chavarria, Maria, just an incredible life force, that woman. And in sort of the pre-interview when she was on the show about a year ago, she asked me what I wanted this project to be, and I was kind of giving her some sort of answers out of a talking head box, and she said, "No, Rafi," she said, "give it a number and a dollar amount." And I just blurted out, "I want to sell this company in 5 years for $120 million. And she was like, "Well, that's what it is." And until she sort of framed it that way and pushed me to actually really quantify what I believe this vision, this dream will result in, it just took this whole project and this whole my whole drive for this to another level. So I want to thank Begin for that. So really, for those out there, really put really answer directly what you want this path that you're on, that you believe so strongly in very tangible ways. The other one, which I do with my friends and associates, and it's a little bit of a trick, but it also, because I believe it, is when I'm having conversations with people and sort of providing them guidance on sort of on their skill set and potentially like the next step in their career, I will compare them to very well-known successful people that everyone knows that are much more visible on purpose. So, for example, if someone is an executive or even an executive director of a Hispanic nonprofit, I will talk to them about how their skills may be analogous to Fortune 500 CEOs. And same for the entertainment industry, the political industry. We know, Maria, it's incredible to say this. We know who the first Latino president is going to be. We may not know who it is, but that person is amongst us, literally in our social network, in our leadership community. Maybe someone that's already an elected official. That person's alive and well and probably already in this work on some level. And so, as I deal with my political friends around the country, I talk to them that way and talk to them about as they need to prepare to be governors and senators and even bigger and better things. So it strikes people that way, but it makes them think about once you start comparing yourself and thinking about yourself in that way, it can be a game changer if you open your heart to just seeing who the wonderful, incredible, talented person is in the mirror. So I wanted to share that with folks. Maria, you have this great concept, and I want you to share it with us here, is that when people are in the process of making these kind of decisions or have made a decision or looking to sort of take their ideas to action into success, you have this great concept of tapping our personal board of advisors. So share with people how they need to just just tap into the blessings that are and the people that are already around them and the reach that they already have that they're not even aware of, oftentimes.
Absolutely. So it's important for us to distinguish a couple of distinct roles that you want to either play for others or certainly have others serve you with. And one is, of course, we all know that we need mentors. We need that go-to person that gives you some guidance and feedback on your career, your current sort of situations that you're facing in your career. The second kind of individual that you want to have in your life is a sponsor. And sometimes that's someone that you specifically ask to be your sponsor. And sometimes a company, if they're smart about creating opportunities for women and ethnic minorities, they'll actually say, you need to sponsor someone for your succession who will be able to take on your particular role in the future. So a sponsor is oftentimes a supervisor or above who is really looking for opportunities to position you for success. So it might be a new project, it might be something that's not in your team, but it's something that you could do that would allow you to shine and get noticed and have an opportunity to, call attention to your skills. So those are two kinds of individuals that in the work environment you really do want to seek those out. If your company doesn't have formal mentor or sponsor programs, make one. I mean, you can go ask someone, I'd like for you to be my mentor for the year ahead. There's some things I really want to work on, and do you mind if I check in with you every so often to just get a little bit of feedback? That's a request for a mentor. A sponsor is a little bit more difficult because you really do need to have something to bank on already. You want to go to someone and say, I feel really good about having completed this assignment. I'd like more like this, and I wonder if you can be my sponsor to help me identify other opportunities. So separate from those two individuals, this idea of having your personal board of advisors, your personal board of directors, it's people that you identify that you can go to, talk freely about the things that you're trying to achieve, the challenges you're facing, and that you're going to go to them for the long-term strategic career decisions that will help you achieve your vision of success, whatever that may be. So for me, over the last 10 years, I can easily identify 4 or 5 individuals who I have been able to call at the end of the day or, set up a lunch or set up a time to talk with them and say, I need some guidance about this particular issue. I'm really concerned about what this might mean for my career, or I'm really excited about what this could do for me. What do you think? Who do you know that I might be able to talk to about this further? And the fact that I can call them and ask those kinds of questions has meant a tremendous difference in my career. Sometimes they keep me from doing things that probably are just, impulsive maybe. Other times they've given me insights about myself or a situation or a person that I had just been clueless about. So, I don't think anybody achieves success all by themselves. I think we all, whether we're formally calling them a board of advisors or directors or not, we all have our go-to people. I'm just saying that this part of your career where you're saying to yourself, I'd like to be, in that particular role in the future, it requires a really deliberate effort to identify people who can give you that kind of guidance and feedback or open doors for you. So in a nutshell, these are going to be the go-to people that you will have over the span of your career, and some will come and go, but you will be able to call upon them to get that kind of strategic advice. I also want to say this.
No, please.
This group cannot just be your comadres. It can't be the people that always agree with you. It's got to be people who can sometimes say, Maria, where are you coming from? This makes no sense to me. Or, hey, that's a crazy idea. This is not going to fly. Here's why I think you should try something else. If your go-to people just say yes, they're not your go-to people. they're your yes people. So, your comadres, your family, they all adore you and love you and may want to support you in a very unique way that just feels like they're going to be, always patting you on the back and telling you you're great, and they're telling you you're going to be wonderful. That's great, but sometimes you need the people who are going to challenge you and to say to you, I don't see it that way. Here's what I think you might be missing. Here's what I think you need to consider differently. So that's a board of advisors, a personal board of advisors.
And you're listening to Dr. Maria Hernandez. Wow, I mean, Maria, this is, there's a reason you're an executive coach in the Silicon Valley and very successful because you know what you're talking about. And I ask people when they listen to Rays Latino Talk Podcast, is just open your heart to the message. If you open your heart to the message and really listen and take this wisdom, this guidance that people at our wonderful Rays of Light like Dr. Maria Hernandez give, not because, she's getting paid, not because, she directly benefits, but because she really is about service, and that's what our Rays Latino Talk Podcast community is about. Because if you open your heart to this message, this conversation, rewind it a couple times, it'll change your life. It really will. And I want to thank Dr. Maria Hernandez for her guidance to me and so many others out there. And it's interesting because you said so much, and we don't have time to delve into all of it, but that's why people have to elicit you for coaching and attend your events and seminars, Maria. But the I find in my own personal life, I really enjoyed this process because I almost kind of know when I go to my board of advisors, kitchen cabinet, I kind of know what kind of perspective I'm going to get because I know these people, right? So, I know who are my moralists and, who are going to want to, in whatever decisions I'm making, kind of keep our spiritual moral center in as focus. Some are the contrarians, some who are the outside the box thinkers, some who kind of, a couple of my, have a brother and another deal that really kind of have that street sense, kind of commonsensical perspective and the dreamers. And, it all kind of comes together though, because even though I kind of have a sense of the perspective they're going to bring, they all complement themselves. And so oftentimes I find that it as much gives you the confidence in trusting your gut as it does in actually guiding your actual decision, if that makes sense. So I think when you have the right people around you, it's so important. Maria, I wrote recently on my blog a set of steps that I go through mentally when making any important decisions and sort of tapping into my network, kitchen cabinet board of directors. That's a big part of it. But one of them that I wanted you to just quickly comment on, there's so many elements to it, is this concept of actually just making the decision, taking action. Oftentimes, whether it's in our personal lives or in our careers, we just sort of put these big decisions in a queue. And so for those that are sort of struggling with making hard decisions because they don't want to offend somebody, or it may lead to a different conversation with a loved one or someone in their career as a colleague, but it needs to be made because the worst decision is one you don't make. What are some of the tools you found you can share with people on actually taking action on making necessary, important decisions?
Well, I have a very quick sort of guide that I read about many years ago, and it really resonated for me. And I think this might have been from a wonderful article in Decision Making in Oprah magazine, and hopefully I can find it for you and send you the link to that. But in essence, this decision matrix that was presented looks like this. Take the decision that you're about to make and ask yourself, what difference does this decision make in the next 5 minutes, 5 days, and 5 years? And I found that to be so profound because sometimes, it can be as simple as, I need to send this person this email to let them know what I really think about something. And when you're about to press that send button, you really want to ask, how important is this? Is this really something that's going to, impact me for the next 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? And sometimes it does cause people to think twice about what they're about to do. And so I look at big decisions with this idea that I only have my life and my strengths to bring to any endeavor. And I am really familiar now with what I can do for others, falls into a certain category of work. And when it's outside of my scope of expertise, I've learned to say, I'm not the right person for that. And if I do try to do something for this person, it's really probably going to backfire. And so if I can make someone's career decisions better in the next 5 months or 5 years, I'm all game for that. But if it's just something to help people get through 5 minutes or 5 days worth of their career path, that's not my best use of time. And I don't know how to say that other than to pick your choices carefully so that you have the maximum benefit for the maximum return in your personal and professional life. And sometimes we get all worked up over something that, it's only going to influence for a few days. It's going to make us kind of, a little crazy and upset. But in the big picture, it's really not going to impact the rest of our career. So I hope that makes sense, that sometimes we look at these big decisions and they're really not big decisions. Sometimes we avoid making decisions that are really going to make a huge difference. And so this idea of what's going to happen as a result of this in the next 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years, that helps me put things into the right context.
Well, Dr. Maria Hernandez, you always, always so much wisdom, so much guidance. I've learned so many things, and that concept you just laid out so well in terms of how it's going to, how a decision impacts, how you look at a decision from a 5 minute, 5 day, and 5 year perspective. So compelling is, part of leadership, and this is something that us do-gooders struggle with a lot, is saying no. And oftentimes we feel it's about just saying yes to everything and not taking a step back to say, what's the best use of my time, what's the best use of my skills, and what's the best way to service someone. And I've tried to get better at that. And one of the things that happens with that piece is that you oftentimes are pointing people in a better path towards a better solution anyway. So someone, oftentimes people will come to me, and one of the things I'm struggling with is people come to me a lot for political guidance, either to assist on a campaign or advise on something. And because that's frankly what I'm most known for. I mean, frankly, my personal career. And so I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm trying to get away from that. And B, a lot of times what they're asking for, there's people that are either more qualified or, just kind of have a more specific expertise in that area. So kind of passing it along or referring them to someone else is actually better for everyone involved. And, those kind of lessons, you definitely, we're all kind of struggling with to some degree, but, the leader, saying no is actually, can be quite powerful and shows leadership. Dr. Maria Hernandez, Maria, you always got a lot going on. Please share with people not only where they can find you in social media, but if you have any projects or anything exciting happening you wanted to share with our Rays Latino Talk podcast listeners.
Hey, well, Ray, this is a great opportunity to just ask people, please come by our Facebook page. We have a Latina Vida Facebook page that you can say hi on, and we also have a group for those Latinas that are interested in getting more advice about their careers and collaborating with others and sharing their insights and experiences. So again, we're on Facebook at Latina Vida, and that's a group that you can access on Facebook. And please chime in on my tweets at Savvy Latina Info. Please let me know what you want to hear about. I'm always eager to respond and learn about what others are up to. So thank you so much, Ray.
Oh, no problem, Doctor. And I wanted to give you a tip that, it's so interesting we're having this conversation today because, later tonight, I'm going to be connecting with someone who I'm going to be collaborating with, Dr. Denor Nieves, someone who is a PhD psychologist, life coach, who actually is in the process of taking the plunge herself into being a full-time entrepreneur and life coach and speaker and consultant. So definitely want to connect you with you for potential collaboration opportunities. And she's based in New York, and I know that connecting with the Latinas in the East Coast, and that market is something you have an interest in. So there's a lot of great synergies here, and we're talking about some of the things that we're discussing in this. We're sort of creating our own kitchen cabinet, and it may end up being a mastermind group, and who knows where that'll go. But I wanted to give Dr. Denoris a shout out, because I think there's a lot of synergy with the work she's looking to do, and the resume and leadership you've shown, Dr. Maria. So I'm going to make sure you two are connected.
Awesome. I'd love to connect with her. So send us an intro email.
Absolutely.
By the way, this is an example of how it's done, folks. Someone says, gee, you should meet so-and-so. Great. Send us an introduction, or give me a telephone number, or give me an email, and let's go for it. That's all it is.
That's right.
As simple as that, and as important as that.
Yeah, the being the one Latino in the room, and the one Latino that got into the cool club and all that. That's old thinking. That's an old paradigm. There is so much for all of us. We all benefit from sharing, collaborating, taking care of each other, helping each other out. So I'm really excited about building this network, and you're going to be a big part of that. Dr. Maria Hernandez, which you can find at all over the place, but definitely on Twitter at Savvy Latina Info, which is one of my favorite Twitter follows for sure. Thank you so much for joining the Rays Latino Podcast, and please don't make it the last time.
Absolutely. I'll be back.
Absolutely. And I can't wait for the Latina Cubicle Confidential podcast. Maria, you got to get your own podcast. Let's do it. I'd love to help you with that. You need one. You need that platform.
I need to take lessons from you, Ray.
Oh, no problem. It would be my pleasure. Thank you all so much for listening to Latinos Talk Podcast, and have a fantastic week.